Right now, as you're watching this, a huge portion of North America is either on fire, choking on smoke, or baking under some of the most extreme heat ever recorded. And in many places, all three at once. It started with the heat, an atmospheric monster so powerful that meteorologists called it the strongest ridge of high pressure ever observed over the north-central United States. That heat shattered all-time temperature records, cracked the ground with drought, and turned entire forests into tinder. And then the fires came. Hundreds upon hundreds of them exploding across the landscape, feasting on the bone-dry fuel, sending up towering plumes of smoke that are now drifting across thousands of miles, blanketing cities, poisoning the air that tens of millions of people are breathing, from the middle of the continent all the way to the East Coast. This is a genuine continent-wide emergency unfolding across the United States and Canada right now. And here's the part that should have your attention. The experts are warning that it is far from over. So today, we're going to break down exactly what's happening, the heat, the fires, and the smoke, where it's hitting hardest, and why the worst may still be ahead. This is a developing situation, so everything I'm telling you is based on the latest reports as of this recording. And the picture is a serious one. No exaggeration needed because the reality is staggering enough on its own. But before we dive in, do me one quick favor, because it genuinely helps this channel. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. And if you're anywhere under this heat, near these fires, or breathing this smoke, let us know how the air looks and feels where you are. Can you smell the smoke? Is the sky hazy? Thousands of you are living through this right now, and your updates matter. And if you want to stay on top of this crisis as it develops, because it's changing by the day, hit that subscribe button. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it means you won't miss a single update. A thumbs up helps push this out to more people who need to see it. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the heat, because the heat is what lit the match. In mid-July, a dome of high pressure built over the north-central United States that was, by the measurements meteorologists use, the strongest ever. Observed in that region, think about that phrasing, not the strongest in years or the strongest in decades, but the strongest ever recorded there. Under that dome, temperatures didn't just climb, they obliterated records. All-time heat records fell, with readings soaring past 100 degrees Fahrenheit in places that rarely see such extremes. And it wasn't just the United States. Across the border in Canada, the heat was historic. The city of Thunder Bay, Ontario, a place that sits on the shore of frigid Lake Superior, not exactly known for scorching weather, hit 103 degrees Fahrenheit, smashing its all-time heat record by more than 2 degrees Celsius, which is an enormous margin for a record. Further north, the community of Armstrong reached 105 degrees, the hottest temperature observed anywhere in all of Ontario since the Great Dust Bowl heat wave of 1936. Nearly a century, and this heat wave broke that mark. And here's what that heat did to the land. It took regions that were already suffering from moderate to severe drought and baked them even drier. It sucked the moisture out of the soil, the grasses, and the forests, turning vast stretches of the continent into a tinderbox. When the ground and the vegetation get that dry, all it takes is a spark, a lightning strike, a downed power line, a stray ember, and the whole landscape is ready to ignite. The heat didn't just make people miserable, it set the stage for an inferno. And then came the fire. And this is where the set the continent on fire part of the title becomes literally true, because Canada is in the grip of a severe wildfire season that is genuinely staggering in scale. According to the Canadian Wildfire Authorities, as of late July, there were around 900 active wildfires burning across the country at the same time. 900. And so far, this year, nearly 4,000 fires have collectively burned through more than 3.3 million hectares. That's an area larger than many entire countries, scorched and blackened. One of the hardest hit and most significant regions has been Western Ontario, which has emerged as one of the biggest sources of the smoke now affecting the United States. In the northwest region of Ontario alone, officials reported well over 100 active fires, with dozens of them completely out of control, not contained, not being held, but burning freely across the landscape. There's a cruel detail that's made these fires especially fierce, and it's worth understanding. In many of these areas, the forests were already loaded with dead, dry wood, perfect fuel. Some of it came from an infestation of an insect called the spruce budworm, which had killed off large numbers of trees, leaving them standing dead and brittle. And some of it dated back to a powerful windstorm decades ago that had knocked down thousands of trees, leaving them to dry out on the forest floor. So when the record heat and strong winds arrived, the fires didn't just find dry, living forest to burn, they found a landscape pre-stocked with kindling. That's part of why these blazes have been so intense and so difficult to stop. And many of them are burning in remote, hard-to-reach wilderness where firefighters simply can't get equipment in easily. In those places, crews are often left waiting and hoping for rain to do the work that human hands can't. It's a brutal, uphill battle. And it's not only Canada. On the U.S. side, the same extreme heat and drought have been driving fire danger across the American West, where blazes have flared amid the record temperatures, baking states from the Great Basin to the Rockies. The western United States is no stranger to catastrophic fire seasons, and the combination of intense heat, dry vegetation, and wind that we're seeing this summer is exactly the recipe that has produced some of the worst wildfires in American history. So the fire threat spans the continent. Canadian fires dominating the smoke story, and western U.S. fires adding to the danger, all fed by the same overarching heat. Firefighting resources across both countries are stretched, and in a bad year, the two nations often send crews and aircraft to help each other. A reminder that this is a shared cross-border emergency. When fire seasons peak on both sides of the border at once, everyone is stretched thin, and everyone is leaning on the same limited pool of specialized firefighters, air tankers, and equipment. But here's the thing about a wildfire disaster of this scale. You don't have to be anywhere near the flames to be affected by it, because the fires produce enormous quantities of smoke, and that smoke doesn't stay put. It rises high into the atmosphere and gets carried by the prevailing winds for thousands of miles. And right now, that's exactly what's happening. The smoke from these Canadian fires, especially those in Western Ontario, is being funneled down into the United States, spreading across huge swaths of the Midwest and the Northeast. Let me explain how smoke manages to travel so incredibly far, because it's genuinely remarkable. When a large wildfire burns intensely, it doesn't just produce low haze. The heat of the fire creates powerful updrafts that loft smoke high into the atmosphere, sometimes many miles up. The most extreme fires can even generate their own thunderstorm clouds called pyrocumulus that punch smoke into the upper atmosphere. Once the smoke is up there, it catches the high altitude winds, the same fast-moving air currents that steer weather systems and carry airplanes across the country, and those winds can transport it for thousands of miles. So a fire burning in a remote forest in Western Ontario can send a plume of smoke that rides the winds for days, sinking back toward the surface hundreds or thousands of miles away, over Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis, New York, and beyond. The exact path depends on the prevailing weather pattern, which is why forecasters can actually produce smoke forecast maps, predicting which regions will be socked in with haze on which days. Right now, those maps show the smoke being repeatedly steered into the U.S., and that's expected to continue. Forecasters have warned that this smoke is expected to continue smothering these regions into August, bringing repeated episodes of haze and unhealthy air to millions upon millions of Americans. Scientists have described this as a dangerous and, in some respects, historic smoke pollution event engulfing both the United States and Canada. When you look at satellite imagery, you can see it. Vast gray-brown rivers of smoke streaming across the continent, turning blue skies milky and the sun a strange, dim orange. If this feels familiar, it's because we've seen a dramatic version of it before. Just a few years ago, in the summer of 2023, smoke from massive Canadian wildfires poured into the northeastern United States and turned the sky over New York City an apocalyptic shade of orange. For a time, that city, one of the largest in the world, had some of the worst air quality on the entire planet, worse than famously polluted megacities. Flights were delayed, outdoor events were canceled, and millions of people were told to stay inside. That event was a wake-up call, a vivid demonstration that wildfire smoke is no longer just a problem for the remote forests where the fires burn. It's a problem for major population centers thousands of miles away. And what's unfolding now is another chapter in that same story. Fires burning in the Canadian wilderness, and the consequences landing on the doorsteps and in the lungs of people across the American heartland and East Coast. The distance between a fire and its victims has never been longer. And this is where the story turns from a distant wilderness disaster into a direct public health emergency for tens of millions of people. So let me explain why this smoke is so genuinely dangerous. Wildfire smoke is full of tiny particles known as fine particulate matter, or PM2.5. Particles so small they can bypass your body's natural defenses, lodge deep in your lungs, and even pass into your bloodstream. And the health effects are serious. In the short term, breathing this smoke can cause coughing, throat irritation, shortness of breath, stinging eyes, and headaches. But it's far more than an irritation. Exposure to this kind of pollution can trigger asthma attacks, worsen heart and lung conditions. And in vulnerable people, it can contribute to heart attacks and strokes. And the scale of the harm is sobering. A recent scientific study estimated that exposure to wildfire smoke pollution has been contributing to something on the order of tens of thousands of deaths every year in the United States alone. That's the hidden death toll of wildfire season, not just the people caught in the flames, but the far larger number affected, often invisibly, by the air. This is why authorities across both countries have been issuing air quality alerts, urging people in the affected regions to limit their time outdoors, especially the most vulnerable. children, the elderly, pregnant people, and anyone with respiratory or heart conditions. It's worth understanding just how insidious this kind of pollution is. Those PM2s. 5 particles are smaller than a fraction of the width of a human hair, so small that when you inhale them, your nose and throat can't filter them out the way they would with dust or pollen. They travel all the way down into the tiny air sacs deep in your lungs, and the finest of them can slip across into your bloodstream, where they can trigger inflammation throughout the body. That's why the health effects reach far beyond the lungs and into the heart and blood vessels. And you don't have to be gasping in thick, visible smoke to be harmed. Even hazy days with elevated particle levels take a cumulative toll, especially over the days and weeks of a prolonged event like this one. Studies have consistently linked wildfire smoke exposure to spikes in hospital visits for asthma, heart problems, and breathing difficulties in the days after the air turns bad. Children are especially at risk because their lungs are still developing, and they breathe faster than adults, taking in more air relative to their body size. So when the air quality alerts go out, they're not being overly cautious. They're reflecting a genuine, measurable danger to human health. So let's address the most important part of that title. It's not over, because it isn't, and this is what the experts are stressing. First, the smoke. The forecasts show the prevailing weather patterns continuing to direct smoke from the active fires into the United States, meaning those episodes of haze and unhealthy air are expected to keep coming through August. As long as those fires keep burning, and with hundreds still active, many out of control, the smoke keeps flowing. Second, the fire danger itself remains high. Even where some rain has fallen, bringing temporary relief to firefighters, the underlying fire danger index in places like Ontario has remained high to very high. And here's a cruel twist. The very thunderstorms that bring some rain also bring lightning, which can spark brand new fires. So the rain gives with one hand and takes with the other. Third, and critically, the heat isn't done. The same kind of heat that ignited this crisis is forecast to keep building and shifting across the continent in the coming weeks, and official fire assessments for August highlight regions where conditions will continue to favor increased fire activity. In other words, the fuel is still dry, the fires are still burning, the smoke is still flowing, and the heat is still coming. Every ingredient that created this disaster is still in place. That's why it's not over. And there's a deeper reason the outlook is concerning. The drought underneath it all doesn't vanish with a single rainstorm. It took a long, hot, dry stretch to bake the landscape into the condition it's in now, and it would take a sustained pattern of rain, not a passing thunderstorm, to meaningfully reverse it. So, even the welcome bursts of rainfall that have given firefighters a temporary reprieve in some areas don't erase the underlying dryness that primes the whole region to burn. Meanwhile, the official monthly fire assessments produced by fire agencies have flagged broad areas where conditions are expected to favor continued or increased fire activity heading through August. Peak fire season across much of the continent traditionally runs through late summer and into the fall, which means, calendar-wise, we may not even be at the worst of it yet. Fire experts often describe a season like this as one that has loaded the landscape, set up the conditions for major fires, with the question being not whether more significant fires ignite, but where and when. Add in the reality that lightning from summer thunderstorms is a leading cause of new ignitions in these remote regions, and you have a situation that can keep generating fresh fires even without any human spark. All of it points the same direction. This is an ongoing, evolving crisis, not a finished one. So what should you actually do to protect yourself and your family through this? Let me give you the practical takeaways, because this is where information turns into safety. First, monitor your local air quality. There's a simple, standardized measurement called the Air Quality Index, or AQI, and you can check it for your area on weather apps and government websites. It uses a color-coded scale. Green is good, and as you move up through yellow, orange, red, and purple, the air gets progressively more hazardous. When the air quality is in the unhealthy range, take it seriously and adjust your plans accordingly. Second, when the smoke is bad, stay indoors as much as possible and keep your indoor air clean. Close your windows and doors to keep the smoke out. If you have an air conditioner, run it, ideally on a recirculate setting. And if you can, use an air purifier with a good filter, which can dramatically reduce the particle pollution inside your home. Creating one clean air room in your house, where you spend most of your time, is a smart strategy during a prolonged smoke event. A simple, low-cost trick worth knowing. You can build an effective do-it-yourself air cleaner by attaching a good furnace filter to a common box fan, which can noticeably improve the air in a single room when commercial purifiers are sold out or unaffordable. And don't overlook outdoor workers and pets in all of this. If your job keeps you outside during heavy smoke, talk to your employer about protection and breaks and wear that proper respirator. Pets have lungs too. On very smoky days, keep them indoors as much as possible and limit their exercise, just as you would for yourself. The goal throughout a smoke event is simple. Reduce how much of that polluted air you and the ones you care for actually breathe hour by hour, day by day, until the air clears. Third, if you must go outside in heavy smoke, consider wearing a well-fitting respirator mask, specifically an N95 or equivalent, which is designed to filter out those fine particles. An ordinary cloth or surgical mask does very little against wildfire smoke, so it needs to be the right kind. Fourth, pay special attention to the vulnerable people in your life. The elderly, young children, and anyone with asthma, other lung conditions, or heart problems. Make sure they have their medications, are staying indoors in clean air, and know to seek medical help if they experience serious symptoms like severe shortness of breath or chest pain. And fifth, if you live in or near an active fire zone, take every evacuation warning with total seriousness. These fires can move fast, especially with heat and wind, and when authorities tell you to go, go immediately. Have a go bag ready, know your evacuation routes, and don't wait to see how close the flames get. And don't forget the heat itself, because in many places, this is a heat and smoke double threat at the same time. That means staying hydrated, finding cooling during the hottest hours, checking on vulnerable neighbors, and never leaving children or pets in hot vehicles. When you're dealing with dangerous heat and dangerous air simultaneously, the safest place is often a cool, filtered indoor space. Here's the honest bottom line. The heat wave that baked America and Canada this summer wasn't just a heat wave. It was the spark that set an enormous swath of the continent ablaze. Record-shattering temperatures, some the hottest ever observed, dried the land into a tinderbox, and hundreds of wildfires erupted, most dramatically across Canada, burning millions of hectares, and pumping out rivers of smoke that are now smothering tens of millions of people across the United States, with dangerous, historic air pollution. This is a genuine continent-scale emergency. A fusion of heat, fire, and smoke that threatens people far beyond the flames. And with the fires still burning, the smoke still flowing, and more heat on the way, the experts are clear. This is not over. The days and weeks ahead demand vigilance. So watch your air, protect your lungs, respect the heat, and if you're near the fires, be ready to move. Stay safe, stay informed, and look out for one another. I'm going to be tracking this crisis every step of the way. The fires, the smoke forecasts, the air quality, and the heat as it continues to evolve across the continent. If you want to follow it with me and stay informed as it unfolds, subscribe right now so you don't miss an update, because this situation is changing by the day and staying informed genuinely matters for your health and safety. Hit that like button to help this reach more people who need to see it. It could help someone protect their family's lungs. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and how's the air where you are? Tell me. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next update. Stay safe out there, breathe easy, and take care of each other.